6% of South African businesses have business continuity plans, or BCPs, in place. The BCP's benefits are a plan that gives businesses the ability to continue their supply of critical products and services if the flow of operations should be disrupted. Joining us this morning in studio is Greg Comline. He's the General Manager of Global Continuity South Africa. Greg, great to have you in studio. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. Now, just elaborate a little bit on BCP.
Well, yes. So a business continuity program really helps any company, small or medium and large companies, ensure that their operations, their services and any of the products that they provide, make sure that they continue to operate, even in the event of a disruptive event, however big the event is.
What kind of events are we talking about?
Well, anything from no electricity being available, and a number of companies can cater for that already, but all the way through to if you have a fire in your building or you can't access your building, maybe even for strike action or something, which we're starting to see coming through quite frequently these days.
Absolutely, more and more. I mean, companies are going through this, and I suppose this plan is kind of right up there at the top when you start off a business.
Yes, and it makes sure, many businesses make sure their operations are running efficiently, but that's in normal operations. What this does is really make sure having a business continuity plan in place and a program that's tested tells your clients and your suppliers that you've thought about the worst case events, and you've put the necessary controls in place and the necessary plans in place to execute, and it can make a company look very efficient, and they can be very efficient in their recovery when they have a disaster, or even a slightly more than normal disruptive event.
Now, I mean, when we introduce the topic, we say the Trends Index of 2015 says 6% of South African businesses have BCPs in place.
Well, yes, it's there's varying levels of BCPs across the. It's certainly most companies are aware of it, and there's certainly a great trend towards putting business continuity plans in place. But what we're seeing in South Africa is a maturity of that. So not only large companies, but medium-sized companies are expected to have these business continuity plans available and execute and tested on a regular basis. So we certainly are seeing an increased demand and awareness across the South African landscape, certainly.
So we've spoken about the disruptions that take place and the kind of disruptions, but what is an example of a BCP? I mean, how would a business continue working in a situation of a fire or a risk of striking or anything like that? Well,
the important aspect, the first part of a business continuity plan is how do you protect your key assets and your key operations within your business, and then you look at what happens if key resources, either people or certain systems, aren't available, and how do you counteract that? And often that can provide that sort of thinking, helps a company go through, well, how can they make their business more efficient, and how can they react very efficiently to this? So everything through from the actual operations through to communications and marketing, what needs to be presented out to all the stakeholders, staff, clients, suppliers as well, and how do they manage it effectively?
Are there different kinds of BCPs?
Yes, they do. So typically each department within a business should have their own execution plan that they should be engaging with, so that they can execute, and they know that that's the plan that they've got to deliver. Typically you would have a crisis management team that would coordinate all the activities across the business. And they've got to be very efficient and make sure the rest of the business is reporting back to them on a regular basis.
In terms of the kind of businesses that would need to have BCPs, are there specific businesses, or should every business actually have one?
Every business should have gone through this process of thinking what they need to do in the event of and we're seeing it more and more in terms of what suppliers are asking from companies that provide services to them, that they do have a business continuity plan in place and that it's tested. And it's no longer just a strategic advantage. We're seeing it as a necessity that you have to have that in place.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you embark in a massive deal with a company, you need to know that if something goes wrong with that company, they have got contingency plans in place.
Yes.
So it's almost like, that's part and parcel of the contract that you sign.
Yes, and we're seeing it being as a requirement coming through more and more in a lot of contracts. We're seeing a lot of rushed business continuity plans coming through where clients need to have that in place in order to win the big contracts or even the medium-sized contracts. markets these days.
Interesting. I mean, obviously, it's is South Africa slow on the uptake on this?
So it's quite interesting. If you look at the standards that are applied globally, there's typically the ISO standards. We seem to be quite a strong adopter and early adopter of these standards. So in some ways, we're quite mature in some of in the way we've looked at our business continuity planning. If you look at things, aspects like electricity, we've put a lot of measures in place already, just simply because we've had to. But it's so that we can mitigate the risks that are within the economy and within the infrastructure we've got in place. So yeah, we are certainly well placed within the world, but we need to we're starting to see other markets also catch up and exceed it. We certainly see Europe being as a strong driver in terms of having these standards and having even from aspects like cybercrime and everything, where potentially you could get hit by viruses and your IT infrastructure. We're starting to see them push through stronger standards.
I mean, it's scary. I mean, you look at your big banks, and when something goes wrong with the big banks, you come to a standstill. It's a big problem, and I mean, I think that's a discussion by itself when it comes to BCPs for technology-driven companies as well. Listen, Mike, thank you. Mike, I'm calling you Mike. I've written down Mike, our reporter, who was talking to us earlier. Greg, thank you very much for talking to us. Really interesting conversation. Thank you. Greg Comline is the General Manager of Global Continuity South Africa, talking to us about these BPPs, the business continuity plan that companies need to have in place these days. Contracts are signed on how good your BCP is, I suppose, and in this environment we need it more and more, so thanks again. All right, let's take a break. We've got some beautiful